Good morning. My name is Irene Kirschenbaum, and I serve as your membership coordinator. And one thing that I wanted to share this morning, one of the many things that I love about this congregation, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of the staff, is the community here of volunteers who are really willing and able to step up when we need people, when we're putting calls out in the messenger for volunteers for things like RE program, OWL, or the other needs that we have around the congregation. We're just so grateful for the congregation and that spirit of community and willing to help. It's one of the things I love. Wanted to welcome you this morning to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Boulder, and want to take a moment to extend a very warm welcome to everyone who is visiting us for the first time. If you're joining us online, please fill out a visitor form in the link in the description. We would love to connect with you. To give you some idea of what we're all about, let me tell you about our mission. We say that here, we connect bravely, deepen spiritually, embody justice, and always love. What we mean is that this community is inviting you into our shared time together today. But it's also inviting you into a way of life, a way of being in the world that may transform you. We want to grow as individuals and to welcome more people into this community, and we want to help you in your personal dream to make the world and your life better. To explain our service this Sunday and give context to it, I am delighted to be joined by worship leader Fred Cole. Fred, let me invite you up to say a few words of introduction.
Good morning. I am a relatively tall, 84-year-old Caucasian male of Scottish origin. I have white hair, rimless glasses, and a gray mustache. Barbara made me shave for this morning. I'm wearing a dark t-shirt with yellow lettering. That is the way you introduce yourself at General Assembly. You get really used to it after a while. Anyhow, officially, it is the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. That's 25 syllables. Is it any wonder that's always shortened to GA? But General Assembly is the annual gathering of delegates, members, and clergy from Unitarian Universalist congregations around the country and around the world. All come together to learn, to connect, and do the business of our democratically governed denomination. It was just over 2 weeks ago that more than 2,300 UUs began to assemble at the David Lawrence Convention Center in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 10 members from this congregation were there, plus Reverend David. One of us was at their first General Assembly. 5 of us were volunteers helping to run the event, and 5 of us were the official UUCB delegates, voting on the business of the association and electing our new president, the Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. I, as a volunteer myself, served as the lead for the in-house information services team. The Sunday morning worship at General Assembly is the largest UU church service held anywhere each year, and with many participants and guests, including an almost 200-voice choir that usually spends a couple of months preparing for just that service. The experience of being in the audience is always one of the outstanding memories from any General Assembly. And this morning we'll be sharing parts of that service with you. We have condensed it because you probably don't want to sit through the whole hour and 45 minutes. There's so much more to say about the General Assembly, and on August 13th, those of us who were there will lead another service talking about what we learned and experienced during the time last week. Now, this morning's format will be different from our usual order of service because of the videos that we are sharing from General Assembly. And we will not be doing the stones or the blessings and concerns this morning. Well, I do want to recognize the newest addition to our community, Ridge Malari Batista Biddle, who was born last Wednesday. So congratulations to both Martha and Candace. But there's a little follow-up on that Ridge was 5 pounds and 15 ounces and a little small for his size. He's now eating well, but after a few hiccups getting started. Martha has had complications and is asking for our prayers and thoughts. She has high blood pressure from the pre-eclampsia and is currently under treatment and not having much fun. So, we'll settle back and enjoy the videos. Oh, that's the main hall, by the way, before the carpet was laid. 2,500 people in there.
Good morning, Unitarian Universalists, and all who are gathered here in person on the banks of the Allegheny River in Pittsburgh, those who may be live streaming from across the continent and even the world, as well as those who may be viewing this service later on demand. We are delighted that you have chosen to be together in community this morning with one another and with us.
Here at General Assembly this year, we have committed to a practice of visual accessibility introductions, letting everyone, however they might access our service, have the information they need in order to know who is before them in this time together to that end. I am Reverend Nancy McDonald-Ladd, a 40-something white female-identifying brunette with she/her pronouns, wearing a beige and black look that complements Manisha's without being matchy-matchy. Because, yes, we planned it that way.
And I'm the Reverend Manish Mishra Marzetti. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am brown-skinned Indian American, middle-aged Gen Xer, wearing a traditional Indian South Asian formal wear. I am also a returning hometown boy, one who grew up just 15 minutes or so from here in Squirrel Hill. I am honored and filled with joy to be one of your service leaders this morning. If you are with us this morning and are from the greater Pittsburgh region, can I invite you to make some noise, please? Yes, Pittsburgh is in the house.
So there's one other thing you need to know about me. Underneath and between all else in this moment, what you need to know about me is that I am Manisha's friend and a colleague to these service leaders and to these amazing musicians. And aren't those the qualifications that matter most on my resume? The relationships, loving and accountable and committed, that keep us honest and create us anew every day. I and you, and all of us, we are friends and colleagues, we are co-religionists, we are makers of the good kind of trouble, and together, we are a community willing to create new ways of being in the most challenging of times, able to build teams that are so much greater than any one of us alone, celebrating where we've come from, and believing in the possibilities of what yet shall be.
Good morning. My name is Stella Anderson. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a white woman in her mid-40s with long, straight, mostly brown hair. I'm wearing a sleeveless cream-colored maxi dress with reddish-brown patterned squares and rectangles, purple-framed glasses, and 2 silver Chalice necklaces. I proudly serve the First UU congregation of Ann Arbor, Michigan as the Director of Spiritual Growth and Development. We live in a time of deep and complex uncertainty. We journey together with our children, one day after another, through a world awash in challenges, the potential for danger lurking around every corner. We wonder what tomorrow will bring, and it's in the not knowing, the wondering, that worries and fears take root and grow. And still, we go on. We wake up every morning, breathe in and out, and prepare to face a world that can be scary, especially for our kids, their small shoulders bearing the heavy weight of climate change, oppression, violence, and injustice. We yearn to shield them from all of it, to keep them safe and protected in a warm cocoon of love and reassurance. But we know in our hearts that we cannot and must not pretend that our world is different than it is. And so we ask ourselves, how do we guide our children through the messiness and doubt of the times that we live in? How do we teach them that it's okay to be afraid, that it's normal to worry, that learning to live with uncertainty is deeply human? How do we explain that, as Robert Frost writes, the best way out is through? Perhaps we can find inspiration in our story for all ages. Whatever comes tomorrow, words by Rebecca Garden Levington, art by Mariona Cabasa, shared with permission by the author and the publisher, Barefoot Books. Tomorrow may bring endless sun or swirly snowy skies. Tomorrow may bring new hellos or difficult goodbyes. Tomorrow may bring loneliness or laughter with a friend. Tomorrow may bring words that wound or ones that heal and mend. Tomorrow may bring changes that are scary, strange, or new. Tomorrow may bring chances to embrace your truest you. Tomorrow may bring obstacles that seem too hard to face. Tomorrow may bring feelings that will need some extra space. Tomorrow may bring questions that you have no answers for, or answers that may lead you to more questions than before. Tomorrow may bring anything you have no way to know, and sometimes that uncertainty gives worries room to grow. They sprout and bloom, consume your mind. You want to run and hide. But you've confronted fear before and reached the other side. You can't control what happens next, the what, the where, the how. The only thing you can control is you, right here, right now. You take a breath, you close your eyes, you whisper, I am strong. You tell those worries in your head, I know I can, you're wrong. And when tomorrow disappears, becoming yesterday, you'll know for sure you can endure whatever comes your way. Tomorrow may bring laughter, love, confusion, fear, or fun, an angry, rainy hurricane, or peaceful seaside sun. Whatever comes tomorrow, however steep the hill, you'll find your path, you'll journey on, you'll make it through. You will. The end.
Hello, I'm Rachel Alba. I'm the Director of Religious Education here. And for those of you who are coming to religious education class today, we are going to exit out that way. Also, for those of you who remember the cocoons we had a few weeks ago, they are now butterflies. So I thought it would be fun for us all to release them in the front sometime during coffee hour. So just keep an eye out for that. I'll clang, or someone taller than me will clang the bell. Let's go.
This second video that we're going to be showing you is the actual service and the sermon and the lead into it from the Sunday morning service. It's kind of fun.
Among the many things that are special about this Sunday, this service includes and has been shaped and designed by a team of colleagues, including 3 former presidents of DRUM, which stands for Diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries. DRUM is our Continental Unitarian Universalist, Black, Indigenous, People of Color, BIPOC organization, a vital institution that has provided social support, skills-building opportunities, and much-needed community to BIPOC Unitarian Universalists for decades. We have a General Assembly first today. Never before have 3 former DRUM presidents been together in a GA Sunday service. As one of those former DRUM presidents, I offer my heartfelt gratitude for my siblings in faith and colleague former presidents, Janice Marie Johnson and Danielle DeBona, for their visionary leadership within Unitarian Universalism and their presence here today.
The words of the hymn that we will sing in a few minutes, right after our chalice lighting, they invite us to gather at the river, these rivers, exactly as we are, with every blessing and every burden that we bear into sacred space. Come, you who have collaborated for an age and wonder where it all is headed. Come, all you who arrived in this place this week, eagerly waiting to find your people and get about the work. Come, you who have served and will serve in the vineyards that bear rich fruit to nurture the generations to come. Come, friends and companions, to look for what it is we are willing to do and who it is we are willing to be together.
Good morning. I'm Janice Marie Johnson. Ooh. All right. I am a dark-skinned elder, a woman of African descent from the Caribbean. I have a short gray fro. I use she and her pronouns. It is my deep privilege to invite Manisha's family, Jeff, Jason, and Mina Mishra Marzetti, to physically light our chalice this morning. As they have joined me and are prepared to do so, we invite online attendees to light your personal chalice, if you have one, as we light our communal chalice here in Pittsburgh. Today, as we light our chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism, we kindle a living flame whose light guides us. All that is holy, all that is greater than any one of us. In kindling this flame, we choose to honor family, leadership, and community. We are attuned to the fact that family encompasses all that truly is our lives. We reflect on the beauty, strength, and promise of the generations, of our intrinsic connection to ancestors, those who are living and those yet to come. We celebrate family in its many forms and imaginings, including the family that is our larger Unitarian Universalist community. In recognizing the challenging times that we live in, we offer our love and commitment to fierce, thoughtful, and sacred leadership. Leadership that can guide us through uncertainty. May the flame of our chalice remind us to hold each other in care, to hold each other in power, and to hold each other in love. Guided by that flame, may we be ever willing to thrive in the growing circle of creativity, to thrive in the growing circle of justice, and to thrive in the growing circle of community. And may it always be so.
Please rise in body or spirit to sing together our answer to the question, shall we indeed gather at the river?
Gathering at Three Rivers, the confluence of many currents, here we are today. The past few years for us Unitarian Universalists, and truly for all of us of whatever background and identities, have been challenging to say the least. We have navigated health-related uncertainties. We have witnessed the health of this nation also at risk at the hands of demagogues. We have witnessed war and genocide and climate-induced hurricanes, floods, and fires here in the United States. Economic uncertainty in these times has become a steadfast friend. First, the danger of a lockdown-induced recession, and then the risk of spiraling inflation. And if the state of our wider world weren't enough to make us anxious, the day-to-day realities in our local congregations might be making us so. Several years into this pandemic, some professional staff and lay leaders are feeling exhaustion from the nonstop pace of reinventing what congregational life needs to look like. Some religious professionals have retired and left their calling. Others have been pushed out as the strife and discord of the wider world have found at times expression amongst us. Some religious education programs have lost kids and teens. Some of our adult congregants have died or relocated to new cities and towns, or simply discovered over the course of the pandemic that they desire a different weekend routine. In parallel, high inflation has meant that what was previously affordable in our Unitarian Universalist communities might no longer be. We are living in a world that is vastly different from the one we knew just a few years ago. A world that has required change and adjustment for many of our Unitarian Universalist congregations. In faithful service to all that this new and different time needs, we Unitarian Universalists are learning to live with anxiety, at times, maybe even fear, that the continuing presence of uncertainty and change can evoke. I now invite us to take a moment and hold in our hearts what the changes and uncertainties of the past few years have meant for you personally, for each of us. Would you join me in that? Whatever today or tomorrow may bring, may we draw on the strength of our Unitarian Universalist faith to hold us and guide us.
Very much. Good morning. I am the Reverend Danielle Dabana. I am a short, older woman. I have very gray, short hair. Cat eye glasses that are silverish blue. I use she, her pronouns. And I live on the land of my people, the Wampanoag Indians. I invite you now to join me with your hearts and mind in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life, swirl around us today as we gather in worship and prayer. Let us feel your spirit and our spirit. Remind us that we will never be alone as we venture into these new times, new work, changes that we cannot imagine, new people who will bring challenges and joys, The times are indeed a-changin'. And here we are, gathered in the midst of such eddies and currents. We recognize that our communities look and feel different than they did just a few years ago. Some who were beloved to us are no longer in community with us. Some have died, some have moved away, and some have moved on. There is a loss in that. We recognize and hold that grief together in this space, in community. We recognize that many of our local congregations have been struggling with uncertainty in the midst of these changes. What does the future hold for our Unitarian Universalist congregations as we configure and adjust to the realities of our day? There has been anxiety and fear among us, and we also hold that with us together here in this space, in this community. And yet, our hearts know that the strength of our collective potential, the potential of Unitarian Universalism, is greater than any uncertainty we may encounter. We are still here. We who have navigated the changes and losses. We who have stayed at the table. We who have galvanized love and creativity into service to reimagining our congregations. Our solidarity, our passion, and our commitment to our collective strength. It is here among us, guiding us, anchoring us. Our love for this faith and for each other is what holds us at the table. Spirit of love, Spirit of life, great mystery, great spirit, all that is greater than any one of us. Help us remember the certainty that we are stronger, wiser, more grounded together in community, that we can always achieve more with others than any of us can achieve alone. And through that togetherness, we can become the people that our times need us to be. May we continue to choose one another, choose the power and strength of community as often as we may need to. Amen.
An excerpt from Men to Fight by Ben Okri. Might we choose to make this time a waking up event, a moment of world empowerment, to pledge in private to be more aware, more playful, more tolerant, and more fair, more responsible, more wild, more loving, awake to our unsuspected powers, more amazing. We rise or fall by the choices we make. It all depends on the road we take. And the choice and the road each depend on the light that we have, the light that we bend on the light that we use.
Oh, my heart longs to know, how do any of us stay willing? How do we stay true to what we know, to what we value, and our commitment to be the people our wider world needs? The call to stay ready and willing to tackle whatever challenges may arise is such an essential quality for us as people of faith. And yet, that call often runs up against unexpected obstacles and losses. We can feel like we're on a road, on a journey, and we're no longer even sure where we're going. 15 years ago, I was much newer in my career as a Unitarian Universalist minister. And I'd just been in a congregational search process that had not gone my way. Smitten with the congregation I was in dialogue with, I was convinced that this ministry was exactly right for me. However, I was not the candidate the congregation ultimately selected and called as their minister. I was devastated. What I thought was going to happen, what I believed was exactly right for me, exactly what I needed, didn't happen. I was shaken by this loss. I did not feel ready and willing for whatever was going to come next. And yet, Holly Near reminds us, to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who have gone before us, so lift me up to the light of change. I knew that I needed to find my way back to open-heartedness, to a willingness to meet what life was giving me. I decided to go on a personal retreat so I could process my experience. The desert is a deeply spiritual and healing space for me, and southern Utah is a place that I have gone to again and again for such grounding and healing. There, I did this very Hindu thing that I wasn't even consciously aware I was doing. In traditional Hinduism, when personal needs are great, we often go to remote temples, ones that are often situated at the top of a mountain, for example. Such spiritual pilgrimages can include an arduous journey to the summit, to the temple, where we then pour our hearts out in anguish and prayer. Something about the physical journey itself allows for catharsis. At Zion National Park, I found the steepest, hardest climb, in this case, up the side of a plateau, and I began climbing it. The journey up that plateau that day was challenging, one of the hardest hikes I've done. But something in me knew I needed to do this, and so I pushed myself to reach the top. Once there, I was completely alone. I sat down, exhausted, and I wept. The grief wailed out of me with only the red rock cliffs to witness and receive my pain. I cried out my disappointment. I cried for the loss of possibility, of a possible future. Just as those tears started to settle, a new round of grief seized me. Something deeper still was lurking. This pain was even greater. Underneath the ego bruising of not getting the job I wanted, I just felt so lonely. I hadn't even been aware of how lonely I was. But this deeper pain began to surface. I became conscious of it, and as I did, I began to pray through my tears. Okay, universe, so there's more learning and growing I need to do. I get that, but amidst all this hard stuff I need to figure out, is it too much to hope for companionship? Is it too much to hope for closeness and intimacy, for the love of someone who could support me on this journey? offered in solitude to all of nature, to the sky, to the red rocks, to the earth. The prayer I didn't even know I was holding just emerged. Amidst all that was hard, all that was challenging, amidst loss and disappointment, I didn't really need the job that wasn't mine to have. What I needed to stay open and willing, as Holly Near invites us, was love and support. Similar to my experience, the pandemic has pushed us all into experiences of things that were supposed to be and were not, or are not. In that there is grief and loss. Some of our Unitarian Universalist congregations are also experiencing pandemic-era losses and changes, losses in membership, losses in the attendance of children and teens, budgetary uncertainty, staffing cuts, and reconfigurations. If your congregation has been navigating currents such as these, you are not alone. You are not alone. How do we Unitarian Universalists remain open and willing to shine the light of our love, of our faith, in the midst of ongoing experiences of change, loss, and uncertainty? How do we do that as UUs? Our transcendentalist forebear, Theodore Parker, offers us this wisdom in a sermon from 1841, The Transient and Permanent in Christianity. Quote, "If we look carelessly on the ages that have gone by, or only on the surface of things, there is reason to fear. For we confound, we confuse the truth with the word of man. So at a distance the cloud and the mountain seem the same." How do we distinguish between the wispy cloud, fleeting and ephemeral, and the heft and solidity of a mountain that can hold us and anchor us? On top of that desert plateau, the deeper thing that my heart ached for was love and support. Isn't this what we Unitarian Universalists are all about? Caring, which is love, which is the impulse behind all the justice and equity work that we do, and support, which we bring alive through relationship, through community. These are essential Unitarian Universalist commitments, UU values that have grounded us and guided us for centuries longer than our relatively newer statement of UU principles. Our UU history illustrates these values. When our intellectual forebearer, Spaniard Michael Servetus, was burned at the stake in Geneva for heresy in 1553, he died because he cared about freedom of conscience within community. He could have privately believed whatever he wanted to believe, yet he died because some part of him longed to have his unique and independent thinking honored by others in community. When Transylvanian Unitarian minister Francis David helped articulate the first Western edict of religious tolerance in 1568, it was the impulse of love brought alive, a desire to nurture mutuality, relationship, and acceptance across difference. When Henry David Thoreau sat in jail in Concord, Massachusetts in 1846 for refusing to pay taxes to a government that legitimized slavery and war, it was a love of our shared humanity that fueled his longing for equity and peace. 19th century Unitarian suffragist Susan B. Anthony marched, organized, and politic because she valued gender equality, and an expression of that was the right for women to vote in the United States. And in the early 20th century, Unitarian Frances Ellen Watkins Harper helped co-found the NAACP as an institutional expression of a value that remains core to us as Unitarian Universalists through this day, the value of racial equity. This anchoring in deep, heartfelt values and anchoring in love and community remains our Unitarian Universalist calling card. It is the ground of being from which we have been contemporary national leaders in justice-seeking movements such as those supporting reproductive justice, marriage equality, migrant rights, and trans equality, to name just a few. Reflected in these commitments are our passion for, our collective commitment to the dignity and unique experience of every person, people who are already among us, people who are dear to us, people who we know in community. All we have to do is look at our shared history over centuries as Unitarians, as Universalists, as Unitarian Universalists. We were not waiting on the sidelines for someone to invent a statement of UU principles in the 1960s. Drawing on our core values, we UUs have engaged with the arc of history for as long as we have existed. It is an arc not just of history, but one of forging, one of creating, one of building the history our hearts and souls have longed for. Pauline invites us to honor those who have gone before us, our UU forebears. We honor them by honoring the values that their lives illumined. For not doing so, to be adrift or lost amidst the needs of the world, to be hopeless would be so strange. Our reading this morning by Nigerian poet Ben Okri also invites us to ponder whether the time we are in might be a waking up event, a waking up to who we really are, to the light, to the fire, the flame within us. That light, that flame is given life week after week in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. This is where our values are made tangible at the local level, in community. I have one last story to share about a former congregant of mine. Her name is Debbie. I'm sharing her story, our story, with her permission. Over a decade ago, Debbie attended a Unitarian Universalist congregation for the very first time. Sunday services in that community included a time during which congregants could share their joys and sorrows, a brief sharing of personal celebrations or hardships in front of the community. Debbie chose that Sunday to publicly share with a room full of strangers that she had lost her job, that she had a special needs teenage daughter, and that she was on the verge of homelessness. With tears in her eyes, she told us that she had turned to every resource and local agency that she could think of, and while help was coming, she didn't know where lunch or dinner were going to come from later that day. As she wept and sat back down, she asked the community to hold her and her daughter in their hearts. To be hopeless would seem so strange. Yet how does one stay open and willing when you don't know where your next meal is coming from? Following the Sunday service, Debbie stayed for the congregation's coffee hour. I watched from a distance as congregant after congregant came up to her, offered her kindness, moral support, and in some cases, money. Over and over again, community members made sure Debbie and her daughter had what they needed for that day and for the days ahead. I could see how moved Debbie was by this, these spontaneous expressions of love, caring, and generosity left me feeling so proud to be a Unitarian Universalist minister that day. I followed up with Debbie in the week ahead and was able to offer financial support more officially from the congregation's ministerial discretionary fund. And what happened next was a beautiful thing to behold. In the months and in the years that followed, Debbie and her daughter joined that Unitarian Universalist community. Her daughter became a volunteer in the congregation's nursery, taking care of the community's babies and toddlers. Debbie found a job and enrolled in an academic program to become a clinical psychologist, a goal which she achieved. She specialized in supporting the mental health of gay, lesbian, bi, queer, and trans people. Debbie went on to establish her own independent clinical practice, and that practice has now become a training site for future clinical psychologists. In a recent conversation, Debbie shared with me that on that fateful Sunday, the first time she was ever in one of our communities, she says, quote, "Unitarian Universalism saved my life." And truly, it's done more than that. It has empowered Debbie in returning the care and support that was offered to her back out to the world many times over. We never really truly know what the future holds, do we? But we can allow the anxiety that accompanies uncertainty to be a catalyst, to be a waking up event, an event in which we remember and ground ourselves in who we truly are, in what our deepest commitments are. We are a people devoted to religious liberty, to justice, equity, and individual and collective healing and growth. We are a people of courage. We Unitarian Universalists are a people who have always been open and willing to rise up and meet the needs of the times we are in. For to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who have gone before us. And so we lift ourselves up to the light of change. The world may buffet us with uncertainty, yes, with pandemics, climate devastation, civic and social strife, and on. The list is long, and we know it. Yet grounded in the strength of our bonds with one another, there are no challenges, no obstacles that will keep us from shining our Unitarian Universalist flame, the light of our love, from the highest mountains, announcing to all that we are here, waiting to welcome others, you who may need us, you who may be longing for us, you who may never even have heard of us before today. Our love for one another and for the wider world is the beacon that has always guided this band of beloveds in the mighty and improbable work of bending the very arc of history. Remember how often we as a movement have succeeded in doing just that. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget who we are collectively. Trust the goodness, the light inside you. That is how we become the people our world needs us to be. We are open, we are willing. May it always be so.
And that was followed by about a 3-minute standing ovation. This month, our offering goes to support the work of this congregation. We are entirely self-funded through the donations of this community, and I invite you to give as generously as you are able. For those online, you can scan the QR code or find the link in the video description. For those gathered here in person, you may also scan the QR code or make a donation as the ushers now pass the baskets. May our gifts be used to enact justice, bringing peace, love to the Boulder community. And while the baskets are being passed, we'll stay seated, but I invite you to join together and singing with that awesome General Assembly choir, singing along with 2,000 or more UUs is truly one of the most inspiring things that can happen to you at a General Assembly. And if you watch really carefully, you'll see that Bob and Janet Evans were there, really there.
forget who we are. Who we are together in response to this good word and to every single beautiful and complex thing we have shared so far this week. And in this hour, I want to invite you to take a good seat for one more minute for a question or two worth posing and a time of reflection and response. If indeed we are to join among the people that this world needs, what is it we must actually be open to? What is it that we together must be willing to help create? Even in the crowded company of our greatest fears, open and willing to create hope where there was no hope before, amid the kindness of strangers and the care of our community. Through the winds that blow, shifting the sand beneath us that we mistook too often for solid ground, open and willing to be changed, held by a tradition whose greater purpose remains undimmed, gifted with the wisdom that arises in the dark of night, open and willing to carry forward the work of progressive faith for the generations stretching out before us, accompanied by each other, yes, even when it is hard, accompanied by these friends and these collaborators across the tradition that is ours to share, open and willing to make space for each other with graciousness and with goodwill. What are you, like you and you and you and you, open and willing to embrace, not just in this convention center or this worship service, but in the stretching span of your life of service? I invite you to think on that question, like really, right now. What new and aspirational thing are you open and willing to embrace in your life? I am not here to boss you around and tell you what that thing should be, but I am here to tell you, though it is not my business exactly what you commit to, you are called to be braver and more open. There is something in your soul right now waiting for a renewed commitment only you can make. Turn it over in your heart for a moment. Hold it, this thing that is worth saying yes to. And when I raise my hands up in just a moment, I want to invite us to say together, here in this space and right where you are at home, to say together simply this: I am open and I am willing. Loudly or quietly, or in the silent sanctuary of your heart, let's say it together one time: I am open and I am willing.
We close our service today with an invitation. Shortly, many of us will gather up at Chautauqua Park for a picnic lunch and a hike for those who'd like to do that. Bring some food and look for Irene and Rachel near the dining hall on the southeast corner. With that, I'll extinguish the chalice, but not the warmth of community or the fire of commitment. These we carry within us until we gather once again. Blessings be.